In this video, we'll show you how to install an aftermarket HD14 Stage 2 kit on the 2016 Electra Glide Ultra. Now the first thing we need to do is make sure you have the radio flashed by an authorized Rockford Fosgate dealer. We have a list of dealers that can flash on our website. The stock radio contains an excessive EQ curve preset by the factory. Now this is fine for factory setups, but with the high performance aftermarket system, you need to remove that EQ curve. This will allow you to experience the full potential of your high performance aftermarket system. All right, let's go ahead and get started by removing the seat using a number 2 screwdriver. Then we'll use a 1/2-inch socket to move the ECU cradle out of the way to access the battery. Once that's done, you can use a 10mm socket or Phillips screwdriver to disconnect the battery terminals. Now we're ready to remove the fairing. First, we'll install the service cover on the fender. Then we'll use a T27 Torx driver to remove 4 bolts on the inside and 3 bolts that hold the visor in place. Now it's best to have 2 people during this step, one to hold the fairing in position and the other to remove the screws. Once we pull up on the fairing, we'll disconnect any harnesses like the light and remove it from the bike. All right, now we're ready to remove our speaker pods. We'll start by disconnecting the harnesses on the top using a flathead screwdriver or plastic removal tool. Then we'll use a 5/32 Allen to remove the 2 screws from the top of each pod. Now, going down below to remove the 3 bolts from each of the inner side of the pod can be very difficult to access, so we recommend detaching the lower harness panel with the number 1 Phillips to give you extra space. Then we'll go ahead and move down and remove those 3 bolts from the lower inside using a 7/16 socket with a swivel joint and extension. Finally, we'll use a 3/16 Allen to remove 3 screws from the back of each pod. All right guys, now we're ready to remove the factory equipment and install our new speakers. The TMS 6.5 speakers included in your kit contain extra grills for Road Glide and TOUR-PAK installs. For our batwing fairing, we're going to use this grill with the 3 tabs. Note that there are left and right grills. We'll start by using a T25 Torx and remove the 3 screws holding the factory grill in place. Then we'll use the same hardware to secure our new grills. Take note when installing, the logo will reside at the bottom. Once you're done, repeat the process on the other side. We'll use the same T25 Torx to remove 4 screws from the speaker pod and detach the harness. Now, connect the factory speaker wires to the new speakers, noting the white is positive and the black is negative. Align the speaker by orienting the Rockford Fosgate logo toward the bottom. Now, once you're done, repeat the process on the other side. All right, now that we have that done, we'll use a 5/32 Allen to loosely thread the 2 screws on the top of each pod. Once that's done, you can reinstall the inner bolts and resecure your harness back in place. Then finally, we'll use a 3/16 Allen driver to secure the 3 outer screws that hold the pods in place. Then go ahead and finish securing the 2 screws on each top. All right, we're ready to remove the gas tank. Let's get started by disconnecting the gas line. Push up on the hose and while sliding the fitting upward, pull down on the gas line. Use a 1/2-inch socket to remove the 2 bolts in the back, then disconnect the electrical harnesses and pull the 2 breather lines, noting that they may be zip tied underneath. Detach the rubber boot from the front of the gas tank and use a 1/2-inch socket to remove the bolt, and repeat that process on the other side. Once you're done, carefully remove the gas tank from the motorcycle. All right, we're getting there. We're ready to install our power harness. First, cut any zip ties off and unsnap the wiring trough cover. Once that's done, we'll take the power connector side of our harness and run it up the clutch side of the motorcycle. We'll route our harness through the main opening up to the headlight area following the factory wiring harness, making sure you have enough slack to make your battery and amplifier connections. All right, now we're ready to prep our amplifier bracket. Start by removing any wiring harnesses from the top of the radio. If you have a satellite antenna, carefully relocate it to the side. Then use a T25 to remove 4 existing bolts. Then we'll install our 4 standoffs using a 10mm socket. Next, position the heatsink with the fins facing outward and secure it in place using a 1/8-inch Allen driver and the provided flathead screws. All right guys, now that we're done with that, we're ready to tune our amplifier. Now, we offer a free amp tuning guide that's available in the description of this video and through this kit's product details page at rockfordfosgate.com. Use the included Allen wrench to remove the smoked control cover. Using the tuning guide as your reference, minimal adjustments should be needed to tune the amplifier. Once that's done, we'll reinstall the cover back in place. All right, now we're ready to secure the amplifier to the amp bracket using the supplied hardware and a 2.5mm Allen driver. Before installing the amplifier, note the orientation of the Rockford Fosgate logo. All right, let's take a closer look at the T-harness. The female T-harness is where the factory harness plugs into and the male end plugs into the radio. The amp inputs are for the front and rear signal input. The amp outputs are for the front and rear speakers. This is the amp turn-on wire. Now these Y adapters split the front and rear amp outputs for additional speakers. And then finally, these harnesses are used together for the DSR. All right, now we're ready to install our T-harness that allows us to interface our Rockford Fosgate audio with the Harley-Davidson electrical system. Take the factory connector and plug it into the female side of the T-harness and lock it into place. Then plug the new T-harness into the rear of the radio and lock the connector. All right, now we're ready to make our amplifier connections. We'll start with the amp input harness and connect the front and rear to the corresponding amp inputs. Next, connect the Y adapters to the amplifier's front out and rear out connectors. Take the T-harness labeled amp output and attach these to the corresponding amplifier's front out and rear out, noting you can use either side of the Y adapter. Finally, plug the power into the amplifier connector and plug the blue wire into the empty connector on the top brake side. This blue wire is the amplifier's remote turn-on, so take note that there is likely an empty plug that needs to be removed before making your connection. All right, now we're ready to install our TOUR-PAK speakers. The TMS 6.5 speakers included in your kit contain extra grills for road glide and street glide, noting the left and right tabs. For the TOUR-PAK, we're gonna use this grill. We'll start by using the T10 Torx and remove 4 screws holding the factory grill in place. We'll use the same hardware to secure our new grills. Remove the speaker wires, noting the positive and negative polarity. Once you're done, repeat the process on the other side. Okay, now we're ready to install our new speakers. First, remove the grill from the trim ring and position the ring in place. Then connect the speaker wires, noting proper polarity. Position the speaker and trim ring and secure it in place using the existing hardware. Take note the logo will reside at the bottom. Finally, align the grill logo and press into place. Then once you're done, repeat the process on the other side. All right, now that we have that done, we'll clean up our wiring, reinstall the center trough, install our gas tank, and make our battery connections. Be sure the gas tank harness is connected before proceeding to prevent any error codes. All right, the time is now. We're ready to test the system. If you haven't had the factory Harley-Davidson radio flashed, now is the time to do this. Refer to your tuning guide for testing procedures and make any adjustments as needed. If your radio is not flashed, keep the volume to a minimum or you will damage your speakers. All right, now that everything is working properly, let's finish reassembling your motorcycle and get this back out on the road. All right, as you can see, this install was pretty straightforward. But if you prefer a professional do the install, we have a network of authorized Rockford Fosgate dealers that can be found on our website. If you have any technical questions, don't hesitate to contact our technical support. They can be reached Monday through Friday at 1-800-669-9899 or through live chat at the bottom of rockfordfosgate.com. I'm Eric, and we'll see you again soon.